Kingdom Hearts has many characters that make the story what it really is, but to be honest, it's kind of a mess sometimes. It's not the point of today's video though. Our subject for today is a character who you can see has been through some shit, but finally he got the happy ending that he deserves. Today, we're going to be exploring the story of Roxas. Roxas' story begins in Twilight Town, outside of the old mansion. Of course, he is the nobody of Sora, and was created as a result of Sora stabbing himself with Riku's Keyblade towards the end of Kingdom Hearts 1. When Roxas wakes up in Twilight Town, he is immediately found by Xemnas, who gave him his new name and recruited him right into the original Organization 13. The events of Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days are something I have already covered on the channel a few months back, where I summed up the whole story of the game in 10 minutes. So without basically recycling content and talking about everything I talked about in that video, I'll go ahead and try to keep this section short. The basics you need to know here is that Roxas starts off being completely oblivious to anything around him. Now, the reason for this is because Sora turned himself into a Heartless when he stabbed himself with that Keyblade, right? But what happened later is Sora was a Heartless for only a short amount of time. This is the exact reason why Roxas actually has no clue what's going on around him or who he was before being a nobody. Often being compared to a zombie by his friend and mentor Axel, later he describes himself as a zombie as well. After being mentored by different organization members, Roxas finally starts carrying out proper work for the organization. And side note, am I the only one that feels like Roxas literally did all of the work while most of the other members didn't do jack shit? Literally. In 358 over 2 days, whenever you start a new day, these guys are just not doing shit. They're literally in the fucking lobby thing, whatever. They're just sitting there. They're not doing jack shit. Okay? Am I the only one that's noticed that? Okay, maybe that's just me, I don't know. While working as basically an errand boy, Roxas is viewed by his superiors as no more than someone they use. A mere tool, if you will. But he does form a friendship with two members, Axel and Shion, and the three become best friends and share a lot of after-work time together. And that is where Roxas really learns about the concept of friendship as well. Because yeah, remember when I said oblivious? I really meant it. This kid's head was more hollow than the St. Dismas cross that Nathan Drake found in that fucking Panamanian prison in Chapter 2.
It's hollow.
No shit.
What?
Okay, I'm getting sidetracked again. What the fuck am I even talking about? Axel says that for the first week of Roxas being an Organization 13 member, he could barely form a single sentence. As the time went on, things started to go downhill as the organization realized that they didn't need both Roxas and Shion, and there were many attempts at getting rid of one of them. Mostly Roxas, since Shion was just a replica who could easily have been just reprogrammed and stuff like that, something which Roxas and Axel had no clue about at first. Even though Axel later found out about the whole situation, he didn't tell shit to Roxas, so he still didn't know what was going on, but we'll get to that. The organization went as far as making a setup mission for Roxas and Shion, where they made Shion and Roxas look like a Heartless to one another, which would ultimately solve all of their problems by having the stronger one defeating the weaker one. Thankfully, Axel intervened and saved their asses. Well, who else would it be but Quentin motherfucking Flynn?
Got it memorized?
Bitch!
Not long after, Roxas came to Axel demanding answers about his past, which Axel really did not want to reveal, basically saying that
finding out the truth doesn't always work out for the best.
Roxas, being furious and fed up with his life in the organization, decides to flee, not knowing where he would go and completely ignoring Axel's warnings about the organization annihilating him if he goes through with his betrayal. This lands Roxas at his favorite spot, the Clock Tower in Twilight Town. There, he meets his friend Shion, who was at this point already reprogrammed by Xemnas to basically defeat Roxas and make him a part of her. After a long fight, Roxas destroys Shion, which leads to an incredibly sad and arguably one of the saddest scenes in the series. Roxas' next plan, though, is going after Xemnas, but on his way back he is confronted by Riku, who, in short, basically just beats his ass, and after which he is placed in a simulated version of Twilight Town, and that leads us right into the events of Kingdom Hearts 2. As I said in the video where I summed up the story of Kingdom Hearts 3 15 over 2 days, the first scene of Kingdom Hearts 2 is also the last scene of Kingdom Hearts 3 15 over 2 days. With that said, Roxas' memory has already been altered, and he thinks he's just a normal kid living in the last week of his summer vacation. Over the next few days, we see Roxas doing basic summer activities, like going to the beach or working summer jobs to get some cash for the trip, exploring, homework, and also participating in some local contests and shit with his friends. Or, they're not real people, they're just simulated versions like the town itself, but yeah. However, as the days go by, things get weirder in the town, to say the least. On the 5th day, Roxas realizes that he doesn't really know himself at all, and is assisted by Naminé, who helps him in learning about himself and reveals to him the truth. That truth being that he is a nobody, who is essentially a being with no heart, who was never really supposed to exist. Roxas also experiences some flashbacks from his time in the organization. Combining that with Axel showing up asking Roxas to come back to the organization, Roxas finally realizes who he really was prior to these 7 days. On the 6th and final day that we play as Roxas in Kingdom Hearts 2, Roxas goes to the old mansion. There he faces another flashback, one which tells him what happened literally moments before the days we just witnessed. Roxas takes his anger out at the computer and proceeds to go deeper into the mansion. He meets Axel, who is at this point ordered to destroy him instead of bringing him back to the organization. Roxas defeats Axel and proceeds to the room where Sora is kept. In the final scene, we see Roxas finally accepting his fate and reuniting with Sora. Roxas is not to be seen for most of Kingdom Hearts 2, but he shows up again when Sora, Donald, and Goofy are going through the world that never was. Here, Sora and Roxas have a 1v1, and after a fight, Sora is the one to win, with Roxas finally accepting Sora, but not before we see how Roxas actually came to be, and his last goodbye with his best friend Axel. Roxas is seen again at the very end of the game, where Roxas seems to finally be at least content with his situation. Also, do I even have to comment on Sora's face in this scene? Like, look at him. This dude looks like he's seen a fucking ghost or some shit. Now, before we move on to the events of Dream Drop Distance, Roxas does not appear in Kingdom Hearts Recoded, even though you might think that he does. This is not really Roxas, this is just a data version of him. With that out of the way, let's move on to the events of Dream Drop Distance, shall we? Roxas appears in the opening scene for Dream Drop Distance, discussing the promise Axel made to him and Shield back in Kingdom Hearts 3:15 over 2 days. He also appears in the world that never was, where he quite literally gives Sora all of his memories. Now, Sora probably has some major PTSD since seeing all of that, since, let's be real, Roxas hasn't had the best life so far, am I right? And finally, we get to the events of Kingdom Hearts 3. I like to call this part Roxas' redemption. Why? Because Kingdom Hearts 3 finally gives this kid the ending he deserved. Roxas finally comes back with the help of Ienzo, formerly known as Zexion, and Evan, formerly known as Vexen. These two are responsible for finding a vessel and putting Roxas' personality and character and whatnot together. But the biggest factor in his return is that Sora used the power of waking. This resulted in Shield coming back as well, and after a badass fight against his former superior members, Zemnis and Syax, who he probably hated the most out of all the organization members if I'm honest, Roxas finally gets reunited with his friends, and after all that shit that they've been through, and honestly, it's one of my favorite Kingdom Hearts 3 moments. Roxas also joins Sora and the entire Guardians gang in the final battle against Xehanort. Finally, Roxas is seen at the top of the Twilight Town clock tower with Axel, Shion, and Isa, formerly known as Syax, who apparently chilled out finally. I guess, I don't know, he took the right meds on this day, I don't fucking know. They are soon joined by Hater, Pence, and Led, and honestly, seeing all of them as a one big group is awesome. and possibly the best ending all of these characters could have had. That's if this truly is the last time we see these guys, which I doubt honestly, but we have to wait for KR's 4 to see that. And that concludes the story of Roxas, a character who was originally seen as a nobody, but ironically enough, it can be argued that he was the most human character of them all. Which, with that said, I hope you enjoyed the story of Roxas. Thank you for watching this video all the way through. As always, until the next video or stream, bye bye!